Graves on Gridiron with Richard Graves.
32 teams set out on the road to Super Bowl 57. Now just 2 remain. It's the Philadelphia Eagles against the Kansas City Chiefs this coming Sunday in Glendale, Arizona. It is one of the biggest events on the sporting calendar, and we're going to look at all the matchups to break down this game and tell you, hopefully, who's going to be lifting the Lombardi Trophy in Super Bowl 57.
Graves on Gridiron with Richard Graves.
Yes, welcome along to the show. This is Graves on Gridiron. I'm your host, Richard Graves, and delighted to have my old sparring partner from the days at Sky with me, Jeff Reinebold. Great to have you here, Jeff. How are you?
I don't know about sparring partners. We were more. I hope we were more partners than sparring.
The last time we were at the Super Bowl, there was you and Rob Ryan, and it was nearly fisticuffs as we broke it down in a boxing bout. We'll give that one to Rob, I think.
On points.
But
I was fighting up a couple weight classes when I was fighting with Rob.
You held your own. You were good. You called the Chiefs on the day back in Super Bowl 54. They came out on top.
Yep, that's right.
Winners are grinners.
Hey, that's it.
If you're joining us via YouTube, watching the show, you might wonder where we are. Well, we're on tour in Ireland at the moment, doing a couple of live NFL shows. So we're in a hotel here before Jeff jets off to Arizona shortly. A little bit about this week. Fantastic reception in Belfast. We're in Dublin right now. And the fans, they are passionate about the game here.
You know what, Richard? It's amazing. Last night we were in Belfast, and you know, I'd done an NFL show there a long time ago, and what was impressive to me was just how much the fandom has grown, and not only just the number of people, the sheer numbers of fans that came. It was standing room only, but the fact that the fans ask great questions, they're aware of the league, they understand football to a great degree, and that's just, again, another indication of how the game has grown internationally. It's no longer America's game.
It's a global game now, and you see that in some of the players involved in this matchup in Arizona. I guess that the one that's gathering most attention at the moment is the offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles, Jordan Mailata, who 5 years ago didn't know anything about this game. He comes to the States via the International Player Pathway Program, and now he is a starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. Best record in the NFL this season, and one game away from lifting the biggest prize in this sport.
It is. It's an unbelievable story. A kid that grew up playing rugby in Australia and had no football background. The International Pathway Program found him and said, asked him, would you like to have an opportunity to become a football player? And the transition is probably easier for a rugby kid than anybody else because they're used to physical combat, and that's their game. I thought about it today, and Sebastian Vollmer, who has 2 Super Bowl rings with his time as the right tackle for the Patriots, was a little bit the same story. A kid that came out of the Olympic swimming program in Germany, and we got him into the International Player Program, and the next thing you know, he's at the University of Houston, and then the next thing you know, he's a second-round draft choice. Jordan's even a greater story because Jordan, as you said, had no football background. And Howie Rossman deserves a lot of credit for the fact that he used a 7th-round draft choice on a kid who'd never played the game. But he saw in Jordan just a huge hunk of clay that hopefully they could mold into a player.
Here was the thing about him. He was drafted in the 7th round, and you speak to anybody associated with the Eagles, and initially the plan was to put him on the practice squad. And it came to the final day of roster cuts, and they couldn't. They had to put him to the active roster because there was so much interest around the league. They knew if they dropped him tried to get him through waivers, it wasn't going to happen.
He'd be gone, yeah. And you know what? You watch him now. You watch how he's developed. And he's still a work in progress as a pass blocker. And that's the hardest thing for a young player to develop. But when you put him in the run game and, it's, I'm going to block you and I'm going to knock you off the football, he is amazing. He is a strong, large human that has incredible athletic ability. And I don't know if you caught this or not, but the Eagles' offensive line, the Kelsey brothers are they're entertainers as much as they are football players.
Well, they're calling this the Kelsey Bowl, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, the offensive lineman, who will be a Hall of Fame player, I think, from the Eagles, he and the offensive lineman did a Christmas album together. And Jordan did a single, and it was like the big man can sing. So he's multi-talented.
Well, it's not his singing that he's been paid for in this game. And along with Kelsey and the rest of that offensive line, they've got a job on their hands protecting Jalen Hurts, because he's been labelled as an MVP candidate due to the much improved play that he's brought onto the field this season. But he's admitted he's not 100% fit. He's been dealing since December with his sprained shoulder on his throwing arm. He hasn't been forced to throw the ball that much so far in the postseason, but he's got to deal with the likes of Frank Clark, Chris Jones, who had 15.5 sacks for the Chiefs during the regular season, 2 big sacks in the AFC Championship game as well. The Chiefs' offense gets all the limelight in Kansas City, but this defensive line is doing just enough.
You know, I think it's interesting when you look at the Chiefs' defense, and it's been kind of historical under Steve Spagnuolo. They start out the year okay, and then they gradually get a little better and a little better and a little better, and then by the time they're in the playoffs, they're actually playing their best football, which is what you want. Now, what's interesting to me, Richard, when you look at this team, they dress, right, and this is unheard of, they dress 5 rookies in the secondary, and you're normally going to dress 7 or 8.
And 2 of those rookies made big plays late on in that conference
huge plays in the
game,
and have played extremely well down the stretch. And you know, the number 1 draft choice that they took out of the University of Washington has played well for them, but they've also gotten great play from their 7th rounder. So, you know, I think that's an indication of, number 1, good drafting, number 2, good coaching. My concern with the Chiefs defense is the way it's built, because they realize that Patrick Mahomes and that offense normally will score points early and often. And what they need to do then is to close games out, be able to rush the passer, play pass defense, those things, because they're going to see the ball in the air a lot. The Eagles, that's not the Eagles' game, as you know. And so the Eagles, if the Eagles can come in and establish superiority on the ground and can mix and stay ahead of the chains, then I think Kansas City's going to have their work cut out for them.
Well, we've just had drinks delivered here kindly. I've gone for a coffee. Mid-afternoon, you've gone for a nice glass of red, just easing yourself into the day, Jeff. But let's talk about this Eagles offense, because it's predicated on the run-pass option. Jalen Hurts quite often is entrusted now by Nick Sirianni to make that call himself and play what he sees in front of him. For the likes of Gay, Bolton, the linebackers for the Kansas City Chiefs, this is going to put an awful lot of stress on them if they're going to somehow find a way to keep quiet what is essentially a really explosive Eagles offense.
Yeah, and I think it transcends all that. Here's where the Eagles cause you problems. And I love coming on your show and, you know, having you on my show, because I love to talk ball with a guy that is good about football, understands football. You know, Philadelphia lives in 11 personnel. They don't even have a fullback on their team. So when you say 11 personnel, Goddard will be 1 tight end, and they'll have 1 back. Any of those 3 backs that they have that are all Gainwell, Saunders, you know, it doesn't matter. They've got players back there. And what that does to the defense is it forces the defense to take a linebacker off the field. And so typically your nickel is not as good a run player as your linebackers are. And Philadelphia is a team that really, the mix that they want in terms of run-pass ratio is somewhere around 70% run, 30% pass. If it gets up above that, when it gets to be 60-40 or 50-50, that's not when the Eagles are at their best. They're at their best when they can establish the run. And you talked about the key of their offense, the heart and soul of that offense, is the RPO game, which puts Jalen in a situation where he's making decisions on the fly, on the play. Do I hand it off to Gainwell, or do I pull it and throw a slant or, you know, one of the RPO routes behind the linebackers? He excels at that. That is when he is at his strength, and I think for Philadelphia, it's going to be really interesting to see how Sirianni schemes to create more opportunities for Jalen Hurts.
And because of that strong run game, it means that you're more susceptible when you try and load up against it to the big wide receiving threat. You mentioned Dallas Goedert at tight end. He's almost the afterthought because they've got so many options. You've got Devontae Smith, the second-year wide receiver, A.J. Brown, who has more than paid his way following last off-season's big trade that they made for him. Should we effectively be writing off the Kansas City Chiefs? You look at the odds makers, but they've got the Eagles as 2-point favourites, and that has to be because we saw so many injuries to the receiving core for the Chiefs in the conference championship game. And let's not forget, Patrick Mahomes is playing on a bad wheel right now.
Well, I think that all of those things are true factors in the game but in today's medical science world, if a player has a week off, they can bring them back really fast. What Patrick did coming off of a high ankle sprain, normally you consider a high ankle sprain a 6-week injury, and he was back playing in 6 days. Now, obviously, the story coming out of Kansas City last week was he only went home to sleep. He was in, the hyperbaric chamber. He was doing all of the high-tech, modalities that they had available to him. And the teams spend immense amount of money on medical staffs and the most up-to-date technology and all of it. So I think those guys will have a chance. This is certainly a good thing that the NFL does, not only to give a week to build up the game, but also give a week for both teams to prepare and get healthy. I don't think you should write off Kansas City, because Kansas City has shown that they have an elite player at quarterback, the most important position, an elite player at tight end. And I don't think it's far. I don't think it's a overstatement to say McKinney and Pacheco as running backs are elite caliber running backs. You've got a great left tackle in Orlando Brown. You got Joe Tooney, who's probably the best left guard in football, and Creed Humphrey, who's an all-pro that nobody talks about at center. So this is a team that's got weapons.
And Isaiah Pacheco at running back, a late-round draft pick as a rookie, as you say, but increasingly through December and into the postseason, he's brought a physicality to this Chiefs offense, which isn't something you associate with them generally.
Yeah, I know. It's such an interesting thing, is that because of Andy, because of Patrick and Kelsey and what they've done, historically offensively, they get, I think, mislabeled as a finesse team. I think they're tougher than people think they are. And, the number one matchup in this game, I think, is going to be the Eagles' offensive line against the pass rushers from the 8 pass rushers that are going to be coming across the ball at Patrick. And when you think about it, I went through this. Did a statistical check, and I'm not a big stats guy, but the number one offensive line protecting the quarterback this year, Kansas City Chiefs.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't think about that, because Patrick's running around and he's making plays, and I think sometimes that does a disservice to some of the other players on the field, because his skill set is so unique, and he's such an incredible player, that you don't realize that we're watching a Hall of Fame player in Travis Kelce. We're watching, a Hall of Fame player in Chris Jones. We're watching, I think, Joe Tooney's going to be a Hall of Fame player. That's a rare thing when you've got that many great players on your football team.
How big a game is this for the Kansas City Chiefs? Because going into the conference championship game, I talked about it being a generational team up there in KC. But the problem is, if you want to be seen amongst the greats, the 70s Steelers. I've got a friend who likes to think the 49ers were a dynasty in the 80s, so we'll best throw them in. But the 90s Cowboys...
Spoken like a true Cowboy fan.
Well, let's brush across that. But if you want to be talked about in the same breath, you have to win multiple Super Bowls. The problem that this Chiefs team have got at the moment, it's a nice problem to have, but they've been to 5 straight championship games, 2 Super Bowls, or 3 now, but they've only won 1 Lombardi. How much pressure is on them to get it done this time and get that second?
I think there's a tremendous amount of pressure on them, because they want to be, and you don't get younger in this game. There's no Benjamin Buttons playing football. Tom Brady avoided the Grim Reaper as long as anybody, but
time waits for no man.
He does not, and this game, because of the nature of the game, your next play could be your last play, and so Kelsey's starting to get older. As this team evolves, you want to be able to say, if you truly are a dynasty, and I would say even 2 doesn't make you a dynasty. I think you need to get the 3rd one to be a true dynasty, and it has to come within a certain number of years. You can't win 1 and then win 1 15 years later and say, well, we're a dynasty. You've got to be like the Cowboys were, or like the Niners were, or the Packers were, or those teams. as great as the '85 Bears were, and Sean Gale, my buddy, he takes an incredible amount of pride in the fact that
he'll be listening. So be careful what you say here.
And I'm gonna. That Bears team was not a dynasty because they won one time, and I've heard Otis Wilson say if Buddy hadn't left and gone to Philadelphia, we'd have won at least 3. But you know what? That's true. It may be true, but no, we'll never know that. The guys like Aikman.
The great Bill Parcells said, didn't he, that give me the history books. What does it tell us about the results? It's either a W or an L. It doesn't tell you whether you're unlucky. It doesn't tell you whether you had a blown call. It doesn't tell you whether you lost a key player to injury or not. When history judges you, it's wins and losses.
You are what your record says you are. And that's another Bill Parcells quote, and that is so true. Nobody can take away from Troy and Michael and all of those great Cowboys that they were truly a dynasty. Nobody can take away from Joe Montana and Steve Young and the 49ers, Jesse Sapolo, and those guys take those teams that were dynasty teams, there's a sense of pride that they have that transcends just being a Super Bowl champion. Because, Jesse's more than happy to slide those rings on and show you.
None of them are shy to show you those rings.
No, because how many guys ever get one, but to get 3, that's incredible.
I'm just looking at the odds makers for this game. They're expecting a high scoring game. 50.5 points is the line set there. And it's because we've got 2 high scoring offenses over the course of the regular season. KC, obviously the number 1 ranked scoring team in the NFL. Is there a chance this could be a tighter, low-scoring affair than we're expecting?
It could be. It could be if Kansas City doesn't heal up at wide receiver. Because, again, they were playing. And what Andy Reid has done over the course of these playoffs has been incredible. Because he has to manage a game with a quarterback that's got a high ankle sprain that can't move and can't throw, can't even take the snap and get to the wide zone, and he figures a way to get that done. Then the next week he comes out and he gets decimated at wide receiver, and he's playing multiple tight end sets because he doesn't have anybody else to put on the field. And all of that's going on under the high pressure of the playoffs and the focus of the playoffs, and it's a loser out game, and you're over there across the field as Joe Burrow. He's done an amazing job, and his staff have done an amazing job of coaching. And that doesn't take anything away from Sirianni, but it's just the reality of the playoffs. So I think this game, I agree with the odds makers that we're going to see scoring in this game, because I think they're just two offenses that are too well matched against the defenses. I do think that it's going to be a game that's going to come down to who's the most physical team up front and who doesn't turn the ball over. Because turnovers in this kind of football will kill you.
Absolutely. Okay, time to put our necks on the line. Over the course of the postseason, on this show, if you followed us, we are a perfect 12-0 on the money line, 6-6 against the line.
Wait a sec. Wait. You what? Do that again?
A perfect 12-0 on the money line to win outright.
I got to call my bookie. I'll be.
But this is where you come into play, Jeff.
So you want me to? Because I'm going to screw it up.
We're going to give our listeners and viewers a double take on it.
All right.
The Eagles are 2-point favourites coming into this game. I've said from the outset, you cannot bet against Mahomes, and it, for me, proved all that on a bad wheel in the AFC Conference Championship game. I'm going to take the Kansas City Chiefs as 2-point underdogs. I cannot bet against an underdog Chiefs team led by Holmes. I think they'll win it outright, but I think they'll cover the 2-point spread as well. Where's your money if you were given any?
Oh, if I was given any, there's so many things to consider in this game. You got Nick Sirianni. I'm going to start with coaching. Nick Sirianni. First time at the Super Bowl ever, right?
Does experience count?
Yes, because you look at history, right? We talk about history. You go back and you look at history. Historically, first-time head coaches at the Super Bowl win very few times. So that's a huge advantage to Kansas City and Andy Reid, right? Spags has been there. His coaching staff has been there, done that. You look at the offensive lines. To me, Philadelphia, for what they do, has a better offensive line. The 5 guys, Kansas City's left side's elite. I think their right side, Wiley is going to struggle in pass protection. They're going to have to protect him. You look at defensive lines, how can you not give the nod to Philadelphia with that front that they have and the depth that they have to keep coming after you? Linebacker, I think, is a wash, and then, or maybe a slight advantage to Kansas City. And in the secondary, you've got two really great corners in Philadelphia, but that bunch of rookies that are running around back there with the Chiefs are extremely athletic and really do a great job in man coverage. Tight end, again, advantage Kansas City. Running back, it's, I think, a wash, really, because I think, McKinnon and Pacheco, you compare that to Gainwell and Sanders, and, so I think the game is so tightly contested and evenly matched that it'll come down to turnovers. And when you think about turnovers, now I start to worry a little bit about Jalen Hurts. One bad decision.
Well, this is the question, because he's been in there in the short list for NFL MVP this season. Everybody's raved about how much his players improved. But the question I have is, if you're able to turn him into a pure pocket passer,
that's the question. Is
Jalen Hurts the man we've seen through the regular season, or is Jalen Hurts the man that was drafted out of Oklahoma?
I think, I really truly believe that for Kansas City to win the football game, that's what they have to do. They've got to make him be in the pocket and beat him from the pocket, throwing the ball down the field and being consistent down the field. I think their Kansas City's defensive backs will press those receivers outside so that they can play an extra guy in the box and take away the run. Puts a lot of pressure on young players. But again, is Hurts a good enough thrower against press coverage where there's no margin for error, there's no cushion there? Can he throw enough back shoulder fades? Those are hard throws to complete. So there's a lot of that that's going to have to kind of unwrap itself as we watch the game. And I'm going to say, and again, there's just a part of me, as much as I'm a Kansas City fan, you
spent a year there, remember, with Dick Vermeil.
Yeah, and I, that is a special, special place, and they're Chiefs Kingdom is amazing. But I just think that this game so much is determined by the big guys, where the big guys play. And when you look at the totality of that, I see an advantage. Could be a significant advantage for Philadelphia. So I'm going to take Philadelphia in 2.5.
You're going to take the spread as well.
Yeah.
There you go. So it's pick your poison, folks. I'm with KC to get their second Super Bowl in the last 4 years, and they'll cover the spread, obviously, if they win. Jeff Reinebold is saying, forget all that. Let's go with the Eagles, and they'll cover the 2.5-point spread. I'm 12-0, picking outright in the playoffs. That's all I'm saying. And one more stat for you, Jeff. You'll love this. KC will be playing in their white jerseys in the Super Bowl.
Now that's different, because that is truly different now.
In the last 18 Super Bowls, the team playing in white jerseys are 15-3. That's the stat that's going to decide this. KC to win it all. Jeff, great to have you with us again.
Always, my friend.
Great to see you.
Really good.
Where can we catch you for the Super Bowl?
I'll be in Phoenix. I don't know exactly at Sky what exactly I'm going to be doing, but I'll be doing something, and I'm looking forward to it.
And we're looking forward to seeing you. Great to have you on the show again. Take care, and let's catch up soon.
All right, brother.
Enjoy the Super Bowl, folks. See you again soon.
Subscribe to Graves on Gridiron wherever you listen to podcasts. And keep up to date with the latest on Twitter. Search for Richard Graves 1. That's Richard Graves, the number 1.